Welcome to Sober Talk. I'm Dennis, and I have lived the experience of an alcoholic. If you know of anyone is struggling with alcohol, please call Alcoholics Anonymous on 1300 222222 or check out the website aa.org.au. And I'll just do the preamble of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problems and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. We are no dues or fees for a membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics or organisation. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses or opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety.
Hi, I'm Misha and I'm an alcoholic. And what it was like for me, what happened and what it's like now. For me, I grew up in a family where drinking was part of our family culture. I grew up in a sporting club and my mum's side of the family is European, so we're allowed to have that glass of beer with pizza night and wine with special occasion dinners and stuff like that. We were taught to drink responsibly, but for me, that doesn't work because I'm an alcoholic. And, I learned straight away that I could identify with what that did for me, how it made me feel and how the first thing I think I remember was it slowed my brain down and gave me a way to have maybe just one or two thoughts in my head at once instead of 1,000, and which is quite a gift for me, and it just was something that I used throughout my whole life to just lubricate life really, and to deal with life. I started binge drinking at probably the age of 12, 13. And during that time period, drugs entered my life as well, as a means to, I think, more to be able to stay awake and drink more. I used it to escape reality. And I think before I started using alcohol to excess like I did, I used other things like food and books and anything I could do just to escape me. I wasn't happy with me. I never felt like I fit in anywhere, and I really never felt like I knew who I was. I didn't have that identity. But at the same time, if you spoke to me, I had this big ego and I was always so loud and boisterous and I had an answer for everything. Even at the age of 2, I could give my mum an answer for everything and why. I never asked why. I told her why. And my poor mother, today we have an awesome relationship, but that's taken a long time to get back. I did a lot of damage throughout my teenage years, especially to that. But with the beauty of this program, I was able to start mending those fences. But keeping it in my teen years, I went through. I put myself in some crazy situations just because I just wanted to booze and party. That's all I wanted. I started having blackouts at 13, 14, and I didn't know what they were. It's a sign of a good night in Australia if, you don't remember what you did the night before. But when it starts becoming a real issue and you really don't remember and horrible things start happening to you, especially if you're a young girl and you're hanging around with older people, which you shouldn't be, you're putting yourself out there and you're putting yourself at risk. And today I understand that a lot of that was my responsibility. I didn't know any better. It's not my fault. It's no one's fault, really. What it was just a young, silly girl who just was already had in this cycle of addiction, and alcohol had me in its grip from a very young age. And I understand that today, and I'm so grateful that I do. And I'm so grateful that I was actually able to put the booze down and find a way to start living a real life. My life, I always had jobs. I had to have jobs because I had to have have money to pay for the booze, and I had to find a way to cover up the fact that I was an absolute mess. You know, I was filled with fear my whole life, so no one would know it, because on the outside everything looked perfect. You know, I had the great apartment in the city. I had a wonderful job in a multi-million-dollar office where I run the sales office, and you know, on the outside, all the bells, whistles was all great, but on the inside, I was that scared little girl who just wanted attention. You know, throughout my teens, my early 20s, I would have done anything just to get attention. All I wanted was to be loved. You know, I didn't think I was good enough to be loved, and you know, I know today I was. It was all just in my head, and that's all part of this disease. You know, it makes me think that I'm not good enough, and it wants me to isolate myself from everyone, so that it can get its grips into me again. And you know, every time I found a group of friends, they all had to drink, they all had to drug, and they all had to party. And if they couldn't party as well as I did, and I started looking like the very great, I'd move on to a seedier group of people, so that, you know, I could look down my nose at them and sort of look like the one that was good. Eventually, though, you run out of people like that. And towards the end, I was hanging around, you know, bikies and not very nice people, and criminals, and really not nice people at all. And so obviously getting myself into circumstances that weren't great. I don't know how, but I survived, you know. I know that I've always had a higher power that's looked out for me. The amount of times where I should have been at places where I've opened up the paper or looked at the news the next morning and people have been shot or murdered or whatever, you know, or just I've left at certain times. And there has been things that have happened throughout my journey that haven't been nice, but they don't affect me so much today, because I've been able to through the 12-step program and the guidance of my sponsor, and also hearing other people's stories and learning from their experience, I've been able to look at my life with reality instead of the disillusion that I used to look at it with. You know, if there was a bad circumstance, I'd turn it into something good. And if there was a good circumstance, I'd turn it into something bad. You know, I couldn't accept the bad things that happened as bad things, because then I'd have to learn a lesson from them. And so throughout my life, I had these repeated patterns that would happen. And all of it surrounded alcohol. And don't get me wrong, I loved booze. I wasn't one of these people that didn't like the taste of it. I loved everything to do with it, the flavour. I surrounded myself with it. You know, I worked jobs that allowed me to be around it 24/7. And, you know, I had so much fun. I did. I really did. For the first 15 years, it was an absolute ball. And, but, you know, the last 10 or so, it changed. You know, when you cross that line somewhere in the middle there, I crossed this line and it got really bad. I didn't even understand. I didn't know that I was sick. I had no idea. I didn't know what the alcohol was doing to my system, physically, let alone mentally or spiritually. I knew nothing of the disease of alcoholism. We had a joke that we weren't alcoholics because we didn't attend meetings, but I didn't know what an alcoholic was. You know, like everyone else, I suppose, that comes into the program, I thought the alcoholic was like the guy that used to come in the morning to one of the cafes I worked at, and he'd get a 2-litre carafe of wine and drink it before he headed off for the day. You know, and he stank and he had daggy clothes and he slept on the park bench near my house, and that's what I thought an alcoholic was. I never imagined myself as being one, even though I'd go home and drink 4 bottles of champagne every night. And towards the end, you know, I didn't know anything about DTs. I didn't know that withdrawal symptoms, what they were. And I thought my shakes at 8 o'clock in the morning were due to my anxiety because of the stress of work, but they weren't, because I hadn't had a drink for a few hours. You know, through my teen years, my drinking progressed. By the time I was about 16, 17, I was a daily drinker. And, you know, there were times in my life where I didn't drink every day. But in those times in my life, there was something else. I'd either pick up drugs or I'd pick up shopping or something. I have other outside mental health issues as well. So I've now been able to learn the difference between the two. But at the bottom of everything is my alcoholism. If I can't manage that, and if I can't stay stopped, then I can't even look at the rest of it, because, you know, anything else won't work unless I can keep the drink down. And I learned that recently. I came into the program on the 16th of August 2017. I remember my first meeting like it was yesterday. I just stood outside of that meeting looking through that window, because my life had fallen apart and I had nowhere else to go. I had nothing else. All those fancy things I had in my life that I thought would make me feel better had all disappeared. All that stuff booze had given me, it had taken away. And I was a shell of a person. I had no soul anymore. I didn't feel like I had a soul. I was full of just darkness and utter despair, and I just didn't want to be here anymore. I just wanted to die, really. I just didn't know how to deal with life, and I had lost my job at the end of October 2016. I lost my job, and that was probably the best thing to happen to me, because for the last 2 years, that workplace which I'd worked for almost 9 years had carried me through blackouts at work and not turning up and running late and only functioning on probably 3 cylinders out of 6. And they were amazing. They were amazing. They were supportive. And at the time when they got rid of me, I was so full of anger and resent, and I couldn't understand why. I really couldn't. But my life really fell apart then. It really fell apart. It enabled me to actually just stay home on my own and drink and have my own pity party. And within 6 months, I lost at least 40 kilos and my body started breaking down. I was waking up. My nervous system started shutting down. I was waking up, not being able to feel my hands and feet, not being able to move. Some nights I'd wake up and just see like a stack of potatoes with eyeballs, not being able to scream out for help, not being able to roll over. And that was some of the scariest moments of my life. I was absolutely terrified. Hearing things and seeing things, and the paranoia in the end was just, oh, wow. Even to think about it now, it's frightening. And, I didn't think I was that sick. I thought, yeah, I've got to put this down for a bit so I can have a look at my mental health and maybe get on the right medication for that. That's the only reason. I didn't think I actually wanted to stop drinking. So when I lost my apartment in the city in April 2017, I moved in with my mum with my tail between my legs. This poor lady that I hadn't spoken to for, not really spoken to for a good 10, 15 years. And she was one of the people that I could point my finger at. It was your fault, your fault. I had such a bad childhood, but I didn't really. They gave me everything they could, and they did the best they could with the tools they had. My dad was a very heavy drinker. He shared his best friend with me. He used to take me to the front bar on a Friday night. We'd drink, and that was from a young age, from quite a young age. But I know today that that's all he knew. So it doesn't affect me like it did. I was angry at him for many, many years. But I've been able to forgive him today. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2010 before I even considered getting sober, before I even understood that I might have had an issue. But when I found that meeting in 2017, August 16th, on a Wednesday night, I remember standing out there. It was at the front of the Teacher Gully meeting at Greenwich. And I looked through the window and I thought, what am I doing here? There's just a bunch of old men in there. What am I going to get from this? I'm not going to get anything. This isn't for me. What are they going to have for me in there? Right. And I saw one gentleman that I'm very close to today, and he looked a bit rough around the edges, a bit like the people that I was hanging around with at the time. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll go in and check this out, because that kind of intrigued me. So I walked in, and this beautiful lady, actually, she was quite short, so I didn't see her, popped her head through the crowd and introduced herself to me and held out her hand, and I instantly felt comfortable. And I sat down and I heard them share their stories, and they might not have been like my story, but I identified. Something within inside me knew that I was in the right place, and I knew that I was at home, and I heard them share about what was going on with my body physically, how the alcohol affected my nervous system, and how all that stuff that was going on with me that I had no explanation for was all because of the alcohol and the excessive use that I'd been doing, and that I was close to dead. I heard about wet brain too, and I knew that the fact that I went from being quite astute with maths to not being able to do simple addition towards the end there was quite scary for me. I knew that, I was close to that. I was close to that wet brain they were talking about, and I didn't want to be there. I didn't want that to happen to me. So I sat down, I listened, I cried like a baby, but it was a good cry. It was a cry of relief. And I heard their stories, and I heard hope for the first time in my life that there might be a better life for me. There was something better than what I had on offer. And I went to a meeting the next night too, and that was the Pain and Women's meeting, which was one of the most important meetings and still is in my life. There I met my grand sponsor, and she took me to meetings after that, and I met a few other ladies that are still in my life today and guide me on my journey, and I cried that whole meeting too. But I eventually became secretary of that meeting for about 18 months, and it changed my life and my recovery, and I might not have got this program straight away. I found myself a sponsor who's an amazing lady, and she gets me more than I get myself most of the time. And I got scared, so I drank again. I drank again 5 days short of 6 months, but stupidly, I didn't come back to meetings. I drank because I dropped off meetings because it started getting too hard and too real. All these feelings started happening, and I just didn't know how to cope with them. I didn't know how to manage them. I didn't know what they were. I didn't do feelings. I did excessively happy or I did angry. That's all. That's all I'd known for a very long time. And when I started looking at myself and seeing that some of that might have been me, that it wasn't them, they, all of that some of it might have actually just been me, I didn't want to look at that. I didn't want to accept that. So I took the easy way out and picked up some booze. But having known what was wrong with my body in the end and how close I was to all these things that, pretty much death, I was too scared to drink, so I picked up other stuff, and for about 4 or 5 months I stayed out of the rooms, and I literally sent myself insane. I was trying to work at the same time, and I was completely nuts. And I remember I finally had a breakdown at work in the toilets, and I was in there for about 2 hours, I think, after throwing up everywhere. I'm not sure if I passed out. I don't know what happened. I do not remember. But all I remember is my boss came in and she said the most amazing thing to me. She said, we're all broken, but just in different ways. So now you've got a choice of what you do. I suggest you take some time off and work it out. You can either go to the pub and get drunk, or you can get yourself to a meeting and get well. And, I owe that lady so much because I did. I walked downstairs and I sat in the park and I thought for 5-10 minutes, what will I do? I don't know what to do. I know what I wanted to do. I wanted to go pick up that booze. I wanted to go drink. I wanted to not think about it. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to. I just wanted to wash it away and push it all down again. But I didn't. Something inside me said that I was better than that. And so I got myself to a meeting, and it was a meeting I'd never been to. There was only 4 people at it. It was a Saturday meeting at Clarence Gardens, I think it was, and it was probably one of the most important meetings of my life. And I came back and And, then I got into service again, and that I started doing my steps properly and really putting some hard work into me and accepting some hard truths about myself, and finding some way to get that forgiveness with others. And I then ended up doing a lot of online service as well, with the Power Talk meetings. And I managed to get those 2 years up. During COVID, I turned 40 in April. On the 24th of May, I got my 2-year anniversary. And, there was things I hadn't addressed yet, like my guilt with my dad and a few issues with him. So in June, it was his 10-year anniversary of passing, and 4 days later, I picked up a drink again because I started not listening to my sponsor. I stopped calling her. I wasn't getting to as many meetings online. There wasn't face-to-face meetings, so I could pretend I was all right behind that computer. That was easy to do for an hour and a half, especially when you're running the meeting, just to say, yeah, I'm fine, yeah, and ask others to share and not so much yourself. I wasn't working my recovery. The triangle of AA has 3 sides for a reason. Service, unity, recovery, and you can't sit on a 2-legged stool. And I forgot the recovery side of it. I forgot about me. I started just hiding behind everything else again. And I found myself in a position where I couldn't deal. And instead of talking to people and doing what I knew I had to do, instead of putting in the right action and doing those things I'd been taught, I ignored all of that and I picked up a drink, and it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. I ended up jumping in front of a car within the first 6 hours, not to kill myself or hurt myself, but just because I was angry at someone and wanted to do what I said. And that's the kind of person I am. I'm nasty. I can be nasty, and just like that, drinking's not fun for me anymore. There's nothing left in that bottle. I turn into that evil monster straight away, and I'm out of control straight away. So, now I'm coming up to 9 months again. I'm 263 days clean and sober because I'd been not honest with everyone. I've been using street drugs again, and I started feeling like a fraud. So for me, this time it's a lot different. I'm putting in more work than ever before to myself. I'm not doing as much service work, but I still am, because service work's important. As much as I give back, I get tenfold from. I've got a lot of strong people in my past that have been put there for God knows why, because I'm so lucky. I'm so blessed. And there's so many wonderful people in Adelaide that help me on my journey that I just can't, put into words how grateful I am for that. And, I'm on a high this morning. I've just found out this morning that I've got a job, and it's this perfect dream job for me that will work around my meetings, will work around my service work. Recently, I've taken on the literature position at the Central Service Office, and I'm doing 2 days volunteer there as well. And I'm secretary of the online meetings again, and life's awesome. My relationship with my mum's going along really, really well. And for me to say that, I never thought I ever would have been able to say that. I've been able to forgive my dad for everything, and I've been able to take responsibility for my part. And not only that, recently I've started making amends with my brother. That's something I never thought would ever happen. From the time I was 5, that was it. We disowned each other, and even when I was that young, silly girl running amok, I reached out for help once, and I sat on that resentment because he turned away from me. And today I'm able to let go of that and realise that he had the same lifestyle growing up, and maybe he felt the same as I did. And it's up to me to build those bridges, because I'm the one that has the 12-step program. I'm the one that has a connection with my higher power, and has a better understanding of myself and the person I want to be and the person I am today. And I am constantly changing. I know that I couldn't see the growth in the beginning, but I can today, and I can feel it. And And it's so amazing. What's on offer in AA is just beautiful. And I have the wonderful, wonderful gift of seeing girls come in today and talking to them and helping them in those early days understand what's on offer here, and it's so beautiful. And it's miraculous. I wouldn't give it up for anything. I know for me, it is AA or amen. I will always have to do meetings my whole life. And it's not have to for me. I've been one of these people from the beginning that's been a meetings person. And that's, you know, as they say, meetings people make it. And it's more than just meetings, though. It's the fellowship and it's the guidance that you get. And you know, I've got so many people to thank that I couldn't do it all in one hit. But those people that listen, they know who they are. So thank you. And I'm filled with love and gratitude, and I'm slowly starting to find this way to have peace inside. And I've never felt like that. I've never had calm on the inside in my whole life. And today I have that. And it's all thanks to AA and thanks to the fellowship. And I know I can go anywhere in the whole world and get that. Just, I can walk into a meeting and someone will hold out their hand and say, welcome, glad you're here, we love you. And it's unconditional. And I think that's me done. Thank you. Dennis, thank you for asking me to share.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I hope I did it well.
Almost like a public speaker. I was blown away.
I have no idea what I said either.
Oh, you don't want to work in radio, do you?
Yeah.
Are you local?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, really? Dennis, get on that.
Welcome back. We have a number of local meetings in the area. There's a meeting every night in the Salisbury area. There's one Monday night meeting at Gawler at 8 p.m. Tuesday, Elizabeth East at 8 p.m. Wednesday, Elizabeth East at 8 p.m. Thursday at Two Wells at 8 p.m. Friday in Salisbury at 8 p.m. Saturday at Davron Park at 12 o'clock. Sunday in Salisbury at 7 p.m. And for further details of your local meetings, please call 1300 222222. Once again, it's up to anyone you know struggling with the alcohol issues. Please call Alcoholics Anonymous on 1300 222222 or check out their website at a.org.au.